You are a voice to your community, nation, and world. This is the Global Call.
Hi, my name's Aline, and I'm 26 years old. I like health food, I like talking, I like my friends, and I like my city, San Diego. I like hanging out in the sun and going to the beach. It's cool, and yeah, I hope you'll come visit sometime.
Welcome to the show today of Global Call. We have another great guest with us, Aline Guinan, and we're going to just be talking a little bit about her life, about some issues from growing up, and stay tuned. This is going to be an excellent episode, and we look forward to being with you, and welcome, Aline.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited you're here with us, and we just heard a little bit from you, who you are and all of that, and tell us just a little bit about growing up.
Yeah, growing up, for me, I grew up in a Christian home where I was brought to church and, Sunday school and a really somewhat seemingly healthy family environment. So I would say that I had a good, healthy Christian upbringing. But under the surface of it all, actually, my family dealt with issues, and the main issue that they dealt with was actually alcoholism, where actually having like a history of alcoholism in my whole family. So.
Yeah. So that must have been hard, just kind of growing up in that kind of situation and with alcoholics as a family. So how did you find your way kind of among that situation?
Yeah, growing up I thought that, my way could be found through church and through God. And so for a long time I actually, because my family had sort of a facade in the front, I thought that maybe church was fake too, that wasn't real. And so I sort of fell away from that whole thing because I wanted something real so badly.
Was it because you went to church and you went with your family and it was kind of like they had this perfect presence, but then at home they were totally different people?
Exactly.
That would be hard.
Yeah, and they had these issues that they were struggling with, that it was almost like they were just a product of their parents, and their parents, are a product of that, which just produced issues in the family, hard things to struggle with. And so it made me think that, that was the same path I was going to head along as well, and that God couldn't help me in that way. So
kind of like there was no way to get out of it or to beat the vicious cycle of sorts.
Exactly, and so I began to seek God. I began to seek for something real, even though I felt like I had already seen that, it was fake and that it wasn't real. I knew that there was something real somewhere. I knew that there was some answer somewhere, and I started to really seek hard for that answer in so many different places. And when I found that nothing else worked, I started going back to church and to God and for seeking truth and seeking so hard that I finally found it.
Yeah. Well, so did you fall into the whole alcoholic thing at any point? Did you feel like that was something that you went into during your process of searching?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was a product of, in my process of searching for truth, I thought, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be too. Maybe this is something that I can't help but just fall into. It's where my family has gone. It's where, it just seems fitting. And I looked for fulfillment. I looked for reality in so many venues, especially alcohol, just seeing it in my family and in that pattern.
Right.
And I didn't find it. I didn't find what I was looking for there either, so.
That would be a tough a tough thing for sure. Do you feel like kind of how you were looking for the realness, the reality versus what was fake because of what you had seen and stuff? Do you feel like just that was kind of hard because you were put in this situation that, here's my family, here's the truth that they've presented, but yet the lives don't follow? We talked about that just briefly earlier, but do you feel like that made it a little harder for you to actually find that as the truth?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like, it didn't work for them. So, and they had brought me up in the nice, seemingly, wholesome environment, and then yet at home it was so different. And so I thought, that must not work either. That's not real, and so really I didn't search there very much at first because I thought, that didn't work. And then finally, something inside of me really, when I had searched other issues and when I had searched out truth in other places and found that nothing was there either, I went back to it. So
how did you feel about God at the time of even just, this isn't what they're doing, isn't working for them, so I'm just going to go do this? Did you feel like that he wasn't real? Or
yeah, I felt like he wasn't real. I felt like I did feel sort of a kind of a still small voice sort of feeling in my heart that there was something real about it, but I just couldn't put my finger on it, and I couldn't find it exactly. And mixed in with what I knew, which was not much, I thought, I feel like maybe there's something real here, but I haven't found it, and my parents haven't found it. And from what I knew of, my parents' relationship with God, it wasn't there. And then actually what happened was when I found that in my searching and my seeking, I found that God was real, and that I could actually have a relationship with my Creator. That's what, it changed everything for me.
So before you sort of felt like you were following a pattern of kind of do's and don'ts and more of a religious structure, and we present this nice face but don't mention the stuff behind the scenes that goes on. And I think a lot of people do that. They have kind of the religious experience where as long as no one else knows, or as long as we present ourselves this way, then it doesn't really matter what's going on in our real life, or just don't tell anyone about it and it'll be okay. I think a lot of people deal with that no matter what faith or religion they're a part of. They deal with the facade of, is this really truth to me, but I can't ever question it, or I can't ever think outside of that, or is there something real within this that I just need to search for? And I think that definitely is a question a lot of people have. So you mentioned religion versus relationship. I guess, there, like we were just saying, there is a difference for sure. Religion is that do and don't thing versus the relationship that is the genuine conviction, that is something that drives your life from within you, not let me follow this checklist and I'll be okay. What did you find with that, with religion versus relationship?
Yeah, well, I'm a very relational person by nature, and so for me, going to church and going through the motions, like you said, and adhering to the rules was it was okay. It was some sort of a structure, and it was all right, but it didn't fulfill the deep void that was in me, really. And once I found out that I could have a relationship with God, I didn't know that I could have a relationship with God because I didn't know He was real. And so once I realized He was real, it changed absolutely everything, because I was so thankful that I could actually have a real relationship with Him.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, where are your family now? Are they still alcoholics? Has there been any kind of redemptive, or have they seen your life, and has anything happened with them, or are they still in the same situation? Or
actually, there's been a lot of redemption, and it's been so cool. I know that that God wants them to have a relationship with Him too, and I've seen already so much. My family saw me and the changes that I went through, that were pretty radical
Yeah.
compared to what life they lived,
Yeah.
And I think that they may have thought, are you okay? You're not the same at all. I mean, I changed so much with just one realization that God is real, and it changed everything for me and made me so free, to where I wasn't like my family anymore,
Yeah.
and I love them and I want, relationship with them, but I just wasn't the same anymore. And over the years, there's been a process of just total redemption with my mom. My mom actually completely stopped drinking alcohol, and that's not even anything in her life anymore that holds her. And that's a really big deal, because it's been something that has held her back. So.
And kind of, I think another powerful point is that like there can be a bondage in your life, like alcohol, for instance, or but there is a redemption where you can be free from it, where that doesn't have power over your life anymore. Like your mom has. There's not power in that anymore for her life, and it's amazing to see that. And do you have any like stories of even growing up and kind of that kind of environment, and what that did to you as a child, like growing up in that environment?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was all I ever knew, because I thought that's how it is. Growing up as a child, if you don't have anything to compare it to, you're thinking that's the way it's supposed to be. And getting older, I realized that it was unhealthy. I realized that it wasn't normal, and it wasn't really God's intention. And I just started to learn, there is something better out there. I do remember a lot of times, opening the fridge up and seeing like just full of alcohol in there, and thinking to myself, is this right? Is this the way it should be? And I think a lot of people in families, like all around the world, they're raised in a certain way, and they don't know if they just think this is the way it should be, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's some sort of abuse, whether it's just something, whatever unhealthy relationship or family environment. A lot of people, they're raised that way, and they think this is the way that it should be. But I think there's built into each one of us a mechanism that searches for the right way and truth,
Absolutely.
And so
do you feel like when you even when you would look into different things that were going on, and you realize even as a child there was something within you that said, oh, is this right, is it not right? So it's kind of like almost like a genuine conviction even as a child. I was just in Australia. I just got back on Sunday, and I met a lady there, and it was interesting because she told me that her and her husband both don't believe in God. And it was interesting because she mentioned her daughter just feels inside like she has just this genuine belief that God exists, even though she doesn't, and that and the mom is saying, well, go for it if you feel like there's something there. But the daughter just has this sense of that God's real, that there's something to it, that she wants to serve him and all these things. And they're telling her the opposite. But there is something within us that seeks for truth, wherever that truth lies. Like we can seek for truth. What sort of things are you doing now? Like, what do you feel like is your passion, your purpose, your vision at this point?
Well, simply put, two things: to know God in relationship just more every day, and the second is to make him known, to others, because he is real, and because there is freedom, from things that hold us. And I have seen it. I'm very involved, at my church, and I have a heart to see people in other nations, delivered in the same way that I was delivered, through just pure relationship with God. I agree with you. I know there are people that are seeking inside, and they don't know what they're seeking for entirely. But I know that if you seek God and his truth, that you will find him. If you search with all of your heart, you will. So that just is something. It's a foundation for my whole life, and it's so fulfilling to see people find that same thing that I found. And I find that it is like the reason that I live now, to show others this same freedom. So
yeah, absolutely, that is good. And so even today, as you're sitting here, you might be thinking, well, how can I know truth? How can I find truth? And even as Eileen was just saying, if you seek truth, you'll find it. And I would just encourage you to seek truth. Ask God to reveal himself to you. Ask for a revelation of who he is. If you're in a situation that has an abusive parent, that has an abusive situation of a substance, or, there's maybe you go to a mosque or to a church or to wherever, and you experience maybe you experience something there, but then when you come home, that same experience in life isn't lived where you're at. I would encourage you to seek the truth, because, with truth comes deliverance. With truth comes the ability to be set free. If we're just held to who we are, that's one thing I think is so powerful is if the truth can't set us free, then what is it we're doing? Are we just adhering to a set of rules and obligations and guidelines? Or is there actually something, something that's greater than us that can set us free from being an alcoholic, from abusive patterns of the past, from just who everyone said we would be our whole lives? There's something that can set us free. And so today we thank you for joining us. Thank you, Eileen, for joining us.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
we
you.
are delighted to have you on and to share your story.
Thanks.
And so we'll see you next time for the next episode of Global Call.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I'm a pediatric nurse at a children's hospital, and I love working with children. I love working with desperate families, destitute families, and I love nations. Any nation, I love them. I love the children of the nations, and I love to travel. So if you're ever in Seattle, come visit me.
Hi, we're here with our second guest of the day. We have Vanessa Larkin with us, and she's with us again, and so we're glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
Vanessa, we just we're going to ask you some questions,
Sure.
just kind of how you grew up with you lived with your mom and your brother and your sister, and not your sister, your mom and your brother.
Yep.
And you guys lived with she had a roommate of sort, and it was sort of like a mixed family.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it really sounds strange. I had questions all growing up, and I didn't know how to answer. But my mom's friend, basically, her best friend, her husband died shortly after he had served some time in the military, and so my mom needed a good place to live. My mom's best friend needed a good place to live, and our families were poor without each other. And so putting together our families, more community, we lived together and made ends meet. It was crazy.
No, I mean, it makes sense. You do what you have to do. So kind of, where was your dad in all of this? And how did that situation even take place? Did you know your dad, or?
Yeah, I knew my dad. I knew that I had a dad, and I knew that he was around, but I saw him maybe once every month or 2 months, sometimes every 3 months, and he was amazing. He did what he could to know, to come and see me, but I didn't know him. I didn't have a relationship with him. I remember before he'd come and take me out to do something, to dinner, to ice cream or something, I'd get really nervous, like I was really seeing a stranger, and that was hard because, that's my dad, but I had no concept of what a dad really meant or what it looked like, but I knew that everybody told me this was my dad, and I'm supposed to have a relationship with him. So.
And you used to kind of maybe even get a little nervous
did.
before he came. I still feel like that sometimes in situations like doing stuff that's outside
foreign.
of your foreign to you. Exactly. You feel like you're going to throw up or something. It's bad, but. So, I mean, that was a lot for you to deal with growing up, and kind of just the responsibility of, getting to know someone you didn't know and all of that. How did as a woman, and, that's very important, that feeling of love from your father and a love from just people. But, a lot of people don't have that. And many people, regardless if they have amazing fathers or even fathers that are there or absent or whatever the situation is, have trouble with that. And, there's actually an official term for it. It's like daddy love, syndrome, or there's some name that people call it, because so many people struggle with, they could have had the perfect father, but one little thing makes this thing in girls. And just sort of, what did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think for me, at a young age, I just thought, let's fill the void. You feel pain, you feel just a void, and it can really be from anything. For me, it was, I didn't know my dad. It wasn't that he wasn't around. He wasn't around a lot, but I didn't know him. And so for me, male attention was everything, you know, like just, I always felt like I had to hold his attention. If I was going to talk to my dad, I had to give him everything that was exciting and tell him everything that I was good at, and then he would appreciate something about me. And what I really found was that carried into my relationships with guys. I had my first boyfriend, I think at, I don't know, 13 or 14.
Larkin.
I know. And truly, all I was really looking for was a friendship. A friendship with a guy that would respect me and
someone
would honor me.
who would like you for just who you were, and not for win the glory scenes and all that, but if you're just hanging out, that actually cares about who you are, the depth of who you are. Yeah, that's definitely
it makes a huge difference. And you know, it just is like one thing to the next, that it was, you know, I had one boyfriend, and I, you know, would move to the next boyfriend, and it was just like there was no season. I literally had a significant other, a boyfriend from 13 to 21 years with literally no gap except for maybe a month. And I wouldn't call myself, you wouldn't think, I didn't say, oh, I'm a needy person, I'm filling a void. I just thought, this is what you do. This is how you live. You get the attention of other people, and you have a relationship, and that's supposed to make you happy. And it didn't make me happy.
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense of how that would feel. And I know that even in my own life at times, you feel like you need somebody to care about you. And even like, you know, you really, it's only God who can fill that. But like, there is something too in you that has a natural need for companionship, whether that's a friend, whether that's a loved one, whether it's somebody, you know, that is, you know, your spouse or a significant other, whatever it is. It's like there's something within you that wants that to be known by an actual person. And you know, for me, like, I really feel like God has had to really work on that area in my life too, of just saying, you know, it doesn't matter what you do and the successes, because even with my dad, we have an amazing relationship, but with him, even, he's a very go-getter kind of guy, and I always have felt that I had to do do something, and that he would cheer me on for what I did. And really, he loves me for who I am, but like for me, I had that pressure to perform almost, that if I don't accomplish something great by the time I'm 20, then I won't be accepted, you know? Totally. And that's not, and really a lot of it's my own insecurity, and it has nothing to do with him, but it's easy for us to feel that way, you know, to allow just even our situations. And I know with my dad, like, you know, we've really talked about, you know, that whole situation, even those different areas, because it is something that can play into your life if you allow it to. If you let those things go by without dealing with them, you can take them into your relationships, into your friendships, into your family.
Absolutely.
And it's important. And you mentioned even when you called your dad and asked him to forgive you for being bitter against him.
Yeah.
Tell a little bit of that story.
Yeah, it was definitely, you know, like a lot of times people don't even know that you're upset with them or that you've been hurt by them. Like I know in my heart, my dad never meant to not be there for me. He just didn't know how. But for me, over the years, I just built up this wall, this bitterness of just resentment, saying, you know, like, where were you when I needed you? You know, why didn't you fill the voids that I needed? And what I realized, and I was just taking a class on how to really get to the depth of who you are. Like, what are you really living for? And I remember in that class, it challenged me to say, who have anger against? Who are you bitter towards? Because it's really more bondage to you than it is ever going to hurt them. So a lot of times we want to do retaliation, like, you hurt me, so now I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to ignore you, and I don't care about you, or we just pretend like we don't care. And so when I felt this conviction in my heart, I just felt like, you know what, I need to call my dad. I need to call him. I need to ask for his forgiveness. And it was so hard for me because it was humbling. I didn't have that relationship with my dad that I could just have a chat with him. It was awkward, but I remember I just needed to be free from that. And so when I called and I said, you know, Dad, I know this sounds weird and I know this doesn't make sense, but I just feel like I need to ask for you to forgive me. Because there's been times in my life I haven't been grateful for what you've been to me, and it's not your fault, but I have just received something from you that says you don't care, or I'm not worth it, but and I've allowed that to be bitterness in my heart.
Yeah. That's awesome that you could do that. And, you know, forgiveness is so important, because really, like you said, bitterness is only something that you really, like, you're hurting yourself, not the other person. And as much as, like, anytime someone hasn't forgiven me, has hurt me, that I could have hurt them like that, really it's damaging them, because they can't get past that. And, you know, I've watched that in people's lives, and I think, you know, even for myself, anytime that I've held on to anything, or you know, sometimes you don't even realize something's there, like, until somebody triggers it, and then you're like, all this emotion comes up, and you realize, what's going on? I have problems, you know, and really, it really is a triggering of God saying, hey, this is an area you need to deal with. This is an issue that is something that you practically even need to just say, you know, I mean, it's spiritual, but just, God, take this unforgiveness from me. I don't know how to forgive them, but show me how. You know, you don't have to have it all figured out, but just ask him to show you, you know, how to forgive, how to love that person. And, you know, it's amazing. I've watched people, even in my own life, who have really seriously wronged me, and I could have held something against them for the rest of my life and been justified in it. But the truth is, it's only something that holds me back. I mean, it's easy to, like, walk through life without forgiving someone, you know, but really the true strong person is someone who can say, you know what, you know, this happened, but I forgive you. I know that you didn't mean to do that, and, you know, even if they intentionally did it, you know, that's who I'm created to be, a person that can rise above and say, you know what, I forgive you. I'm going to move on. I'm going to release you and allow you to live your life, me to live my life, and to see, you know, what God can do. It's amazing what God can do, how he can restore those situations, how he can even heal those relationships, to be able to have a relationship again, to be friends, like, even with your dad, you guys are close, you know?
Yeah.
And so today, even as you're sitting here, you know, we just encourage you to just check your heart, you know, ask, is there any person I have unforgiveness toward? It doesn't matter if you're an atheist, agnostic, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, it doesn't matter what you are, but, you know, there are principles, and if you forgive, you shall be forgiven. And, you know, there's truth to it, that we have to allow our lives to be higher than just carrying stuff and being bitter throughout our lives. So thank you, Vanessa, for joining us, and thank you for joining us on Global Call, and we'll see you next time.